We are at time now. So first of all, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for coming to this conference. It's my first conference like this. I don't know about you guys. Has anybody ever done, although Brandon, you mentioned you've done a few this time. I've never done an e-conference like this, and it's really cool. Brandon mentioned earlier that he wouldn't have even been here if it were a live in-person conference. So it's I like seeing something like this actually be creating new opportunities for people instead of what is often focused on, for me at least, my go-to is the complaining what isn't working. So that's pretty cool. I am doing this talk on how to talk with clients and get a win for everybody. And I first just want to say thank you to all of the sponsors of this event. I know that typically we have several sponsors for this event, but this year, because of everything, it was slower to get this going, and I'm so thankful for all of the support in the community in Louisville. Louisville's got a great tech community. I'm sure many of you are already a part of the Louisville Tech Slack, and I think even if it's outside of your radius, like Brandon mentioned earlier, we'd still welcome you and be a part of the community. There's connection there as well as networking, that kind of thing. It's a great resource. Yeah. So just a little bit about me. My very first job in tech-ish was working for a nonprofit. And what I did there was I just managed essentially anything web related. So I managed their social media. I did their website, and that was through Squarespace. Essentially no actual programming involved there. I'm sure some of you are familiar with Squarespace. It's similar to Wix, that kind of thing. But I was able to learn a lot about the why behind processes. So why do we care about this data? How do we collect data? Who's coming to these websites? What articles are they clicking on? And how can we take that knowledge to help fuel future events? And that was a really helpful perspective building for me. And then from there, I started out as an intern and eventually became an account manager at a company called Brickbridge Consulting. And that is where a lot of these skills that we're going to go over today, I was able to put into practice. Before all of this, my switch into this tech world, I did a lot of what people like to refer to as soft skills. I did a lot of stuff regarding soft skills, worked in restaurants. I also have done a lot of writing. I do creative writing as a hobby. I've written curriculum for various religious type events and written and ran retreats for different groups of people. So that's where my wheelhouse was before learning how to program. And it was amazing how those skills I picked up there really drove my ability to relate to customers. It's something that I feel like tech is easier for me to learn just in my spare time. There's so many resources out there. I mean, even just Googling, like, why is this null returning as an empty string, or what I expect to be null? There's so many resources out there. There's not as many for how do I know what to say next to the client? So I'm very thankful for that time. It really helped prepare me for this account manager. I essentially functioned as I would start very beginning discovery phase and carry all the way through to the project delivery. And sometimes I would even do end user training, which is very different than talking to like your main point of contact with a client. And then now I'm currently just a straight up web developer. I do not have to talk to clients. I am told what to do, and I'm very happy about it. So that's a little bit about me. And then I have my LinkedIn and GitHub and that kind of stuff here. If you do have any questions you want to follow up with me, you could say your session at Code PaLOusa or clients, or, really whatever, shoot me an email. And then I'll also drop my LinkedIn in the chat, so it's easier just to copy and paste for you guys. If you're interested, I would love to connect with each of you. That would be great. So let's go ahead and get started. This is a very, very common perspective that I tend to go to, but also I just hear all over the place. It's so common, in fact, that it's almost like a joke. Anybody that works with IT, but not in IT, will come out that I've met saying this is all they hear all day, that end users are dummies, or why does everybody else I work with. I'm in IT, and how come all these other bankers can't figure this out? So it's really easy to just write off clients as being stupid for several reasons. But what are some of the causes for our frustrating experience is what I'd like to go over. So kind of the why behind it feels like they're just dumb. So the first one is assumed knowledge. And this honestly goes both ways. It goes from there's assumed knowledge on our part as developers, and there's assumed knowledge on our client's part. So, but from the client's perspective, they are experts in their field. They are experts in their company, so much so that there will be aspects of their job that we may be trying to automate that they don't even think to tell us or include in the initial specs. Like just the thing about telling somebody how to breathe, like how would you instruct somebody on how to breathe? Or even at the start of the day, how would you instruct somebody on your booting up your computer? You probably get into the same few systems every day, but do you do it the same exact way? Do you always open your email first and then your like communication platform, your chatting system? Like for me, I go into the same 6 systems. I have little icons on my computer. I click, 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 but I never do it in the exact same order. Sometimes I sign on later. Sometimes I completely forget to sign on and do it when I can't access something because I didn't connect to the VPN or something. So this is something that comes up regularly when dealing with clients is there's an assumed knowledge that they have about a business process that to them makes total sense, but we are not a part of their business. We don't know, we're not experts in their field. So we don't have that information. So I'm going to, Brandon, let me know if you can't hear this. I have this video I want to play just the first minute or so of the kind of examples, this issue that I'm talking about. So I'm not sure how audio is going to work. So let's give it a try.
It does sound a little distorted.
Okay.
Can't make out words.
You can't make out the words? Okay. I guess we'll just skip it then because I don't really know what else to do about that unless somebody knows a way to share audio better. We'll just skip it. But essentially, and I can drop the link in the chat too if I can find it still. This is a video of a father who asked his kids to show him how, or to write out instructions on how to make a peanut butter and jelly. And it's a very clever way to just show that when we get these business instructions from clients or sometimes project managers, sometimes even development managers, there's this assumed knowledge. So at one point, one of the kids wrote down, get the peanut butter and get 2 pieces of bread. And so the dad got the peanut butter, got 2 pieces of bread, and then said, spread it around the bread. But the last thing he referred to was like getting a knife. So he spread the knife around the bread without any peanut butter. And the kid was like, what are you doing? And that has happened to me so many times where I am following the instructions as they are written, but it's not what the end user actually wanted. So it's just kind of a funny little video. Oh, it's not. There we go.
Yep, and we did have some interest from some people in the chat who'd love to see that link.
Okay, great. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, I'll try and find it there. Okay, there we go. Finally stopped playing it. Okay, so this that was a little bit about the assumed knowledge. Next thing that I like to keep in mind is everyone is new at something. Everybody's a virgin of an aspect of life. They've never done it before. There are some questions that we can get, especially as being more techie people, that are just like baffling. Like how do you not know, or how it can be so repetitive. We just talked about this yesterday, or this is my 3rd time answering this question for you. And it will make you want to pull your hair, like what's happening to Lloyd there, Harry's pulling his hair. But everything we do or experience, there has to be a first time. And you might just be the lucky one that is walking that person through something for the first time or second or third, but they haven't gotten it yet. There will be questions that were obvious to you on your first time. So it's really helpful for me to think about what's something that didn't come easy to me, that I did have to ask a lot of questions for. And then just realize that what comes easy to this person may not come easy to me. And then obviously what's coming easy to me does not come easy to this person. So that can be a helpful perspective for me to have. The next one is just simply that change is hard. there have been times when I've worked to streamline processes with clients, or even just showed my mom a faster way to do something online. And the very thought of learning something new and then putting that into practice over and over again has been so overwhelming that the person wants to quit, just immediately wants to quit before they've even tried. So imagine that same kind of thing, the same kind of energy, but on a company-wide scale. The dread, emotion, and energy around what we as software developers are so lovingly building for people. That energy from the client, that dread, is going to come through when we're talking to them. So what, again, might feel like they're just being dumb is really, there just might be that natural resistance to learning a new business process, learning something new. And it will make that, it just simply makes it more difficult to learn something when you go into it with that resistance. Most of the time, the decision to use new software comes from the top, not from the people that use it day in and day out. And that's just really hard on people. Another thing that is often, I'm aware of when I'm talking to clients, is just asking them to tell me how to build something that they've never seen or used. Tell me how to build this brand new software thing. You've probably seen aspects of it. You probably can cherry pick, oh, I really like this about this platform and this about this platform, but neither one of them have this third feature that I want. So let's like create our new platform. So the client's going to have to explain this to us but they've never even used it. So it can be brand new for them. So as an example of that, I'm going to ask if we could just all try and imagine an elephant, just straight up elephant, but with a neck like a giraffe and a tail like a pangolin. So first of all, does anybody even know what a pangolin is? I'm checking the chats here. Has anybody ever heard of a pangolin? I guess that's a no. Yeah, thank you, Zara. So yes, and heard of, okay, Brandon, you've heard of a pangolin? All right, so Calvin's describing it. It's like an armadillo. So Calvin, would you be willing to unmute and just describe to us what an elephant with a tail like a pangolin, but a neck like a giraffe would look like, as people who've never seen it before? Putting you on the spot here. If you're willing to do that, Calvin, that would be great. You are allowed to say no to me.
I think I've lost audio. I think I've lost audio. I can't hear anything.
Yes, we can hear you, Calvin.
You can hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So describe what an elephant with a tail like a pangolin would look like.
Yes. And a giraffe, like a neck like a giraffe. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I can't hear. I'm going to drop off my phone. Oh.
Okay, we see you.
All right, can you guys hear me now?
I can.
Great, thank you, Brandon. Okay, so thank you so much for attempting that, Calvin. That actually is exactly kind of the issue. It's just difficult to do. So here is a picture of a pangolin, so y'all can see that now. And now that we have seen a pangolin, same question. Now that we've seen it, just try and describe what this imaginary animal would look like, where we're cherry picking. We want this main thing to be like an elephant, but we really want a neck like a giraffe and a tail like a pangolin. This is what we're asking clients to do regularly. We're trying to get requirements for something that does not exist, that they've never seen, and it's very hard. And even more so, how much of the tail do we want? Do we want like the butt and the tail, or do we want everything up to the elephant and then just the tail? So there's a lot of factors there that come into play that can make us feel like, man, these end users they're so dumb. They don't know what they're even asking for. So one thing that's helpful for me to keep in mind is when I'm functioning as the point of contact for a client, I am functioning as their guide. I am showing them. And so it's an opportunity for me to show my client how to take a problem and turn it into a solution, how to take a hole in their business process and turn it into income. And as my client's point of contact, I'm immediately put into a position of authority and trust. But I have to show my client, how something will work, why something will work, or why something won't work. I need to slow down. It's also helpful if I resist making statements that tell my clients what to do. Instead, I like to invite them in so that I can say, how would you suggest that we solve this problem? And then it becomes a dialogue as opposed to me just saying what to do. Otherwise, this is what happens. So if we don't slow down and show them what we're trying to build and allow them to show us what they're asking us to build, we'll be trying to get business requirements like Aladdin and Jasmine there at the bottom. So how do we do this? You are the answer. You are the solution. Your clients know this. That's why they're coming to you. Your clients assume that you are the expert. They know you are worth their money. They value your opinion. But the secret is, from our standpoint, is that the client is the expert. The client is the biggest asset to a successful project. The clients that I work with, they are the expert of their company compared to the two of us. They're the expert of their business processes, the way things are supposed to be done, the way things are actually done. So our job when talking to the client is to get them talking, to use this asset we have. So the problem is, how do we do that? Especially us who are not great at talking to people. People who, if you're like me, so I'll speak for myself here. I don't love talking to people. I often don't care. I don't care about whatever it is that the stranger I've never met before is going to tell me. So how can I be getting them to talk to me? So small talk is key at the start of every meeting, but it has to be the right kind of small talk. There's a formula to use. So the point of getting them to talk is to build trust in the relationship. And we're also needing them to talk, to tell us about the project, their business, whatever. So it's kind of like priming the pump, so to speak, for when we're moving on to the technical requirements of the conversation. So some things to talk about in the small talk section is to consider your relationship with the client. Is this a brand new client, or is this someone you've worked with before? Brand new clients, talk to them like you would talk to anybody meeting them for the first time. Be respectful, friendly, direct, curious. With long-term clients, all those things are still true, but this person, or at least the company, you have some familiarity there. So follow up on previous conversations, previous projects, etc. If there's a new employee, but the company is an old client, do a mix of these two. It can be helpful to reference previous projects you've done with them, or ask about a coworker that person has that you've worked with in the past, while still getting to know that your new point of contact. This is kind of twofold for old clients, but new points of contact. This is helpful because you're getting to know that person, but it's also showing that this company trusts you, or trust your company that you're representing, and they like you, they're bringing you back. So it will go a long way in gaining trust, and then therefore the ear of your new contact. Location, if your client is located in Florida and a hurricane just went through making national news, ask how they're doing. How'd you fare in the hurricane? How's the company holding up? Current events. Obviously, COVID is really easy right now. Ask the client how shutdowns are going. How's quarantine? Is that affecting the business? How's morale in the midst of all this? It's helpful to be careful not to make assertions during this time. You don't want to start out by saying, man, COVID sucks. That's not wrong. COVID does suck. But the point of this introductory small talk is the conversation, like I said, is to prime the pump. We're preparing for the business part of the conversation. So why is that important? We're wanting to build trust. If the client thinks you're going to listen to them, they're going to be more willing to tell you things. Your client, if you had just asked generally like, hey, how's COVID affecting your life right now? They might say, actually, my family's closer than ever thanks to COVID. I'm very thankful for this time that we've had. If you've already said COVID sucks and I hate it, it may shut that other person down and they won't want to engage with you. This is especially bad if they like unconsciously internalize that shutdown. That will negatively impact their ability to communicate with you as you talk business. Internally, if they feel as they've been shut down, they will assume you're not interested in what they have to say, their opinions, their ideas. They will assume you've already have your own opinions and then either just not share their opinions, which is fatal when it comes to getting specs or feedback for projects, or they may become frustrated and defensive, which is fatal for trust, collaboration, and satisfaction. A shutdown client will not become a repeat client. Points of interest is another good topic for this small talk time. If your client just said they have felt closer than ever to their family, follow his or her lead. Oh, really? How so? Do you have children? Do you live close to your parents? Like, just, you want to be bringing out more information from them. And then points of connection is another easy small talk thing. I have a family, so I can easily respond with, yeah, I have 4 young kids. It's been really nice not to have such a full schedule. So I'm not agreeing or disagreeing that COVID this time has been great. I kind of cherry picked a point of connection with that person where I can affirm what they said. So what kind of things have you been doing to build connection as a family? That would be a way to pass the ball back to the client because we want to keep them talking. So if for these points of connection, I find it helpful to not take over. Like, I want to connect with them and have that be with that building that trust, but then have them be given the opportunity to follow through. This kind of small talk conversation, we want it to be quick. If you have an hour-long meeting, give the first 5 minutes or less for this type of thing. If you have a smaller meeting scheduled, then do it even quicker than that. Sometimes, this has only happened to me one time, but there are times where I'll get like a big talker on the other line. So it can be helpful to have some one-liners in your back pocket for if you come across that situation to transition the conversation back to the business side. The next thing that's helpful about getting our clients talking is to take notes. This is so beneficial because, as I said earlier, the truth is we don't really care where this person we've never met went on vacation. The chances of us remembering his vacation spot the next time we talk in like 3 weeks are very slim. So I like to keep notes on every person I talk with in a company. So I will write down their name, their position, their email address, how long they've worked for the company, anything they say in our conversation, I'm just jotting it down. And then what I talked about with them, what their job title is. All of this has been really invaluable in building trust with the client that I'm actually talking to, the point of contact there, but also the leadership of the company. I've been able to reference aspects of employees to presidents and C-suite executives, say employee names, summarize what they do, share an employee's perspective with the leadership, and gain a greater trust by demonstrating that I have a deeper level of understanding of the company's inner workings. This has led to the people with the ink and the pen to approve the projects, approve my paychecks essentially, to give me their ear when it comes to my suggestions for their project. The next thing that is very helpful is to ask open-ended questions. So asking open-ended questions, there's a few things I like to think of here. Thinking of conversation like a funnel. So obviously it starts really big and then it goes smaller and smaller and smaller. Getting into this business side of the conversation, always start big and work your way down like a funnel, very broad at the beginning of the conversation. All projects are at its most base level problem solving. There are many right ways to solve a problem. And there are even more ways that look like they'll be right, but it actually turns into a dead end. I'm sure we've all experienced that. Not even just in life. So dead ends, though, for a company are a waste of company time for both companies, my company and their company. And it often makes projects go over time frame and over budget. So this start the maze at the end, it's impossible to prevent all dead ends in a project, but there is a way to minimize dead ends and wrong turns. So if you think of those mazes at like restaurants on kids menus and stuff, literally, if you start at the end where you're supposed to come out and go backwards, there is no false starts in there. No, they're not trying to trick you like in the beginning. And so obviously that's intentional on the maze creator's part, but it's very similar overlap in life in general. So starting at the end, you can almost always find the beginning without making wrong turns. Starting at the beginning, there's just more opportunity for wrong turns. Before starting a project, I want to know where I'm going and work backwards. What will this program, project, software be used for? Who will use it? How will they use it? What technology will they have to use the software that we're building? I want to know what it's going to look like at the end, and then I roll backwards. Always using we language whenever it's possible. I am now a team with this client. We're working together. So a win for the client is a win for me. Literally, like, they're paying me, so that's a win, but also having that joint ownership. We're building this together. We language is also a subtle way to build trust with the client. It invites the client into decision-making, decision choices, design choices, and the more ownership an internal point of contact has in a company, especially larger companies, the more likely they are to help that project succeed. They've got skin in the game. How are we going to give the scheduling managers more interactivity with their techs? Would be a way to ask a technical question there. The point of contact there, if they're actually building it out, when they're talking about this, just like water cooler talk, like we all do at the office, they're going to have more excitement in their voice, and that's going to carry over to other people. I like to get a picture of the current state of the company. So what need will this software meet? Or what problem will this software solve? How is it being currently handled and met by the company? You may already have a solution in mind for the whole point of the conversation. But again, there is likely already a system in place that needs to be transferred to the new technology. Rarely do companies start from scratch. They're more often building onto something that's existing, streamlining processes. And I don't know what those processes are. The client does. I need my client's expertise if I'm going to build a successful project. Getting clarity as you go down the funnel, this is where you'll want to integrate any kind of yes or no questions. Often these questions will be follow-up questions to something that's been said. How will truck drivers be able to use this web-based application while on the road? Yes and no questions are to be used for clarity. So that's sort of an open-ended question. And then we'll get that answer. So then we'll clarify it with saying, so the truck drivers will be provided cell phones, given permission to use data, and we'll use that to accomplish checking the inventory while on the site. And then that's yes or no. So I use yes or no questions to summarize everything that's been said, to make sure that I'm understanding it and give the opportunity for clarity if it's needed. I also think it's helpful to kind of break it up or nuance it into smaller segments. So that gives the client opportunity to, instead of just like, wow, that was a really long sentence I just said. That sounded right. Most of that was probably right. So I'm just going to say yes. So I'll shorten it and say, so the truck drivers will be provided cell phones, and then stop and wait. And the person will say yes, or they'll say no, well, actually, however the conversation will go. Then follow that up. The truck drivers will be given permission to use data to access the web-based application. Yes. And they will use this web-based application for checking inventory at delivery sites. Yes. So yes and no questions are also helpful as a springboard for your next open-ended question. Summarize what you're understanding in the project or business process, and end that with, do I have that right? So with that summary statement, do I have that right? And giving the client the opportunity to respond, to correct me. Once everything up to that point is sufficiently understood, then you can go back to the open-ended questions. So what happens from here? What's the system? What system will be used for checking inventory at the factory? Do those systems need to communicate? Those are more the open-ended questions. Getting requirements in this way, using open-ended questions, results in a more whole picture of what needs to be accomplished. Often when I talk to a client, they're really focused on like their biggest headache. And then that becomes the whole goal of the project. And then all this peripheral stuff I'm missing. So this open-ended question, this conversation is the precursor to gathering these technical requirements. So now I know I need to build a system that's compatible with mobile phones, is web-based, and needs to communicate with another system that I'm not building. From here, my technical requirements just naturally flow. So what phones does this app need to be compatible with? Do you plan to use cloud storage or on-premise? What's the security need to look like? And if it is on-prem, is it set up for connectivity when a user isn't on site? Does the other system have an open API? These are all these kind of technical questions that I might not have known if I just was told. I might not want to ask if I was just told we need to build an app for our truck drivers. And some of that peripheral stuff is missed without these open-ended questions. But even with these technical questions, I follow the open-ended question formula. So I start with the widest part of the funnel and then work my way down, and using yes or no questions for clarity. Most often with the technical side, more research needs to be done, and that's fine. But the more I'm able to get these questions that will come up naturally for me when I'm having this conversation, the more I can get answers in that moment, the easier it will be for me to do the research. I'll have more information, so I'm researching the right things. I'll be further equipped to answer questions that might come up for me while I'm researching. So taking notes, again, I like to take notes about the project in the same file I'm taking notes about the company and the employees. That way I have it all together. I can refer back to everything very easily. When I'm doing the research and in future conversations, I just have it all right there. It keeps both sides of the relationship accountable to what's been said and what's been promised. So I take very thorough notes about any kind of project details. I will write down everything, no matter how much something makes sense to me in the moment. Time and time again, when I go to do the work, I cannot remember how to handle one aspect of the project. It has happened with every project I've done. I thought, oh yeah, that's obvious. And then I go back to it because I'm managing 4 or 5 clients at once, and I can't remember what was so obvious to me at the time. Refer back to my notes. Being able to refer back to this conversation is invaluable for me. It minimizes the need for extra meetings or email exchanges, which cost both companies time and therefore money. It also really helps with the scope creep. So that's one of the benefits. The limiting of this extra interchange, of this extra emails, keeps scope creep at bay. Additionally, I'm adding value to my company in the eyes of the client. I'm demonstrating that I do what I say, and I do what I say I'll do, that I understand not only the parts of the project that I'm working on, but the inner workings of the company and how this project will add value. And this is the way I get repeat customers. So overcoming objections is the next really helpful tool to use when communicating with clients. If I'm able to predict objections, then I'm able to already have an answer for them, and that's very helpful. So objections can come from a few different people that you might be connected with, but the first and most obvious person is the client that I'm talking to right then, my point of contact. Objections can also, and perhaps more frequently, come from the end user. So think about the project from their perspective. Ask yourself questions from the end user's perspective. Seeing or using a system for the first time, what are the ways this objection could be overcome and increase client satisfaction? Building that into the design phase for the project will set you up for success and further the chances of this product that you're building to actually end up in end users' hands. Initiating the conversation. If I know that I'm going to need something from a client that has been difficult for previous clients to give me, or just wouldn't surprise me, like, oh, this might be a hard ask for some people, and I expect that objection, then then I can have the answer for it ready. So even if the client doesn't object to it, if I already have the answer ready and then kind of include it in my pitch for that particular thing, it will come across the client that I'm very thoughtful. I have thought stuff from his perspective. I have options. I'm easy to work with. And that can be very helpful, even if that client doesn't have an objection. There's also been times where my point of contact didn't have that objection, but their supervisor did. And they were able to return back to their supervisor and summarize our conversation, say she needs this, and the supervisor will say, oh, well, we can't do that. And then I've already given my point of contact the resources that he needs, the words to use with his supervisor to overcome that objection. So it's very helpful trying to think globally and then provide little bridges for wherever there might be a loss of communication. So an example of this, it's having the objections ready and then also having the solution is there. I used to work with a platform heavily where I would need people's username and passwords to get in to their existing system and manipulate things. People don't want to share their credentials, especially since most people use the same credentials for everything. So I would always, in my request for these credentials, I would say, can I, I'm going to need your username and password, but I'm not interested in your personal information. So you could either create like an admin username for me that has full rights to everything. You can change your password to something generic and then change it back when I'm done, or you can just give it to me if you're comfortable with that. And that has been very helpful for that company. When I presented it that way, I never got any pushback. If I failed to present it that way, then the pushback would come. And the unfortunate side about that is the damage was kind of done by that point. They didn't trust me already. It's like I was trying to search for a way to make them comfortable with giving me their credentials, as opposed to being sort of on the offensive there and prepared to help make that a more comfortable thing for them. So this is really important. If the objection comes back from the leadership of the company, and you don't have a solution ready, that can be a hindrance to you. But it's also really helpful if I can come up with one together. That collaboration, it brings it back to that ownership of the product from the client side. And also, they know things I don't know. They are the experts of their company. They're the experts of what they do. I also like to wonder what an end user will think about an aspect of what I'm building. So then I can bring it up to the client. I can say, well, what will the warehouse guys think of being trained on this new technology? And this brings the objection to the forefront and forces a plan. And working with the client to problem solve gives the client that ownership, and it creates excitement about what's being built. Without this, I may spend hours on a project that gets wiped because I didn't think through what the end users would be like. And then the managers are like, this isn't worth it. This pushback isn't worth it. Or I'll have to make changes, and that costs, it takes longer on the project, and the cost will either go up for the client, or I'll have to eat that cost and to keep the quote the same. So it's a really helpful tool to bring it up in the forefront, because it's also something that they might not have thought of. So you're really able to be of service that way to your clients. Repeating back everything that was said, summarizing the conversation, hitting key points is very helpful. This is true for any size project, big or small. For any project, there are natural groupings of tasks. So you could think of it as far as like end users, well, the truck drivers, the managers, the people that work in the warehouse, or you could think of it as managers or pages of a website, locations in the company. There's lots of natural groupings that will come up in your conversations, and any grouping structure is fine. But within each of those parts, that grouping, that's where the summarization needs to happen. So summarize what needs to happen. Take a sentence or two for each part, unless there's a part that is extremely detailed or very important, or even slightly fuzzy to me. I will go into more detail on those parts to give the opportunity for clarity, make sure I'm not missing something important. This is a vital step to protect against misunderstandings, and will set you up for a successful project that actually gets in the hands of the end users. These next three statements are a really great wrap up whenever you're repeating back to the client. So I will broadly summarize everything that's been said. I'll get started on this, whatever the project name is, or aspect of the project, or whatever it is you're going to do, just a sentence or two. You're going to, and this is really key for reminding the client what you're waiting on for them. So what if you do need their username and password, or whatever responsibilities that you're waiting on from the client? This could be an email, clarification, approval from the boss. I mean, whatever it is that you're needing from them, you want to include that in what you're repeating back. Anything during the meeting that you were needing them to do. And then we'll connect on. This is to get your follow-up scheduled right away before you go. Some companies are really great at communication. Most I have found are not really great at communication. I've had several clients that the only time I got any information from them was while we were on a meeting, while we had a pre-scheduled meeting, while we were on the phone. So I get it scheduled every time, even if it's tentative, even if we end up needing to cancel it or not needing it, reschedule it. And I really recommend meeting as often as your company allows for the budget to ensure that you're on track, prevent wasted time and energy. Realizing something isn't going to work in phase 1 is way more cost effective than realizing it in phase 4. Do not let the fear of change prevent you from being a clear communicator, because change is inevitable. So think about that elephant, giraffe, pangolin thing. The client doesn't really know fully what they're asking. So once it starts to take shape, it's easier for them to see what they're going to get. And they'll be like, oh, I didn't want an elephant at all. I actually wanted a turtle with a giraffe neck and a pangolin tail. This is especially true for new projects and initiatives within companies. And then write these 3 statements down. You've already taken a lot of notes on the conversation and what you're going to do. So I'll really only write additional things on I'm going to if the client is waiting on something from me. So like a quote or something, I want to write down what they're waiting on from me, what time frame I told them I would get it to them. And then it's obviously very important to keep that time frame, or to send very clear communication about why I can't keep that time frame, and you don't want to share too much of the dirty details about why you can't. You just say, I'm so sorry, I'm not gonna be able to get this to you by end of day today. I should have it to you by Friday. And but very clearly stated thing. And then you'll need to write down what the client's going to do, especially if you need it to complete the project or to start the project. There have been times that I've been waiting for something from a client and I put it in an email, but there's been so much email interchange that I can't find that email, and I can't find those like quick little bullet points. I'm waiting on this and this from you so that I can get started on phase 3 of the project. So if writing that down in where I'm taking notes, then it's really easy. Just go to like what I'm waiting on from the client. It's really easy to refer back to over time. So, and then I will always email these in a follow-up. I also put any follow-up meetings in my calendar right away, so there's no double booking happening in the company calendar, especially. In the email, include the I'm going to, you're going to, we'll connect on, whatever needs to be included there. Again, the I'm going to, really broad. I'm going to get started on this project, or I'm going to get you the quote by Friday, whatever it is. And you're going to, really specific. You want to remind them everything you're needing, because you're waiting on them. So more specific on the you're going to, and then the we'll connect on. And then in the email, make sure to thank the client for their time, express your excitement to being in work on the project, and send this follow-up email the same day or the next day. So this last tool I use to get the clients talking is to butter them up. This actually needs to be spread throughout the whole conversation. Not sure if any of you caught the spread joke, so I'm gonna make it really obvious here. Spread the buttering up throughout the conversation. There's always end your time with a client, no matter what it is, even if the client is the whole meeting's a difficult conversation and they're sharing what they don't like about the work you're doing. End it on a positive note, affirming them. So here's some ways that I use to find ways to butter them up, ways to compliment them. I think about what it's costing that company. Has anybody here ever overseen a software or business process change for a company? Not built the process, but actually like overseeing that for a company. Like, oh, we're going to integrate this new system and I'm overseeing this transition. Not seeing anything in the comments here. Just hold up for that. It is very difficult. It's very stressful. The person that you're talking to that's doing this is under a lot of stress. They're very likely, they've got a full-time job, they've got other responsibilities, and this was put on top of their plate. So keeping that in mind when you're talking to them can show, like, thank you for giving me this time. Thank you for putting extra energy, delaying these other projects, these money-making tasks for you. They really are taking time out of their schedule for you, which can show how important this project is, and in turn, I am as the person they hired to complete the project. Giving compliments, any chance I have to give a compliment, I take it. So very, very small things, like while we're talking, oh, good idea. Oh, I love how you said that. Little things. And just saying something's a good idea does not mean you're going to use it. So it's just part of the brainstorming process. Smile. I know this one sounds weird, especially if you're on the phone, but smiles come through your voice. It's kind of obvious right now with COVID, everybody's wearing these masks, but when somebody's smiling, you can tell with their eyes. It comes through their eyes. It's the same thing with our voices. It's actually a tool that I know salespeople use often, is to smile while they're talking to their clients. And then listen between the lines. Throughout the conversation, I like to listen for reasons that my client agreed that this project is worth their time or worth the cost of the company. Very often, our clients are doing this because they believe that bringing this new software will be of service to their employees or to their end users or to their team. So the company is willing to incur this expense and take time away from their money-making tasks because they want their employees and team to have a better working experience, or they want their end users to have a better experience. The company may be gaining profit in the long run. That's often why companies make choices, but that doesn't take away from the sacrifice that's being made today, that they're delaying that. So a lot of the time, my clients don't even realize that they're expressing that. They don't know the why behind their actions, but through listening to them, I can hear it. And so tell them where you hear their desire to serve others, to be a team player, to make a choice for someone else. It makes people feel good for others to recognize the good things about them. And if the client feels good when they talk to you, the client will like talking to you and will be more likely to listen to your suggestions. You're building trust and you're creating a repeat client. Learning the why behind their company. Why are all these people in this field? How is this company doing good for its consumers? Point this out at the end of your conversations and say how much of a pleasure it is to be a part of something like that. This isn't always obvious what's happening behind a company. So I recommend being literal here. Like, like if you were to watch a commercial for this company, the Sappy commercials, what would the commercial be saying? So my dad's an electrical engineer. He works for like an LG&E type place where he lives. So I don't know what electrical engineers do. What does that mean? How can I use this tool with someone like that? So for his example, I can end the conversation by saying, the care for your consumers is really evident. You guys are working hard to keep the lights on for people, keep their food fresh. It's a pleasure working with you and be a part of something like that. So here's some little hesitations that I've experienced through my time talking to clients. So I'm the expert, but what if I don't know the answer? So this is really scary. It's hard enough to be on a call with somebody or face-to-face with somebody, but to be asked a question and not know the answer, I don't know how to do something. To me, it feels like if I own up to the client that I don't know the answer, the client's going to walk out the door. But unfortunately, my go-to is actually to like turn it back on the client. And so I was once asked to make a UI change that I didn't think was possible. And I told the client, it'll take some getting used to for your team, but I think once you get used to it, it'll be fine. So I basically told the client that this is your problem and you just need to push through. And guess what happened? That client went a different direction. They had already spent money with us and they still chose to go another way. So the fear I had of losing the client is what kept me from saying, I don't know. But by saying no to something, I lost the client. So it is so much better to say, I don't know, than saying, no, your problem, you figure it out. even if you're saying it professionally. The problem with that is you're shutting the conversation down. You're shutting the client down. Saying yes to everything is not the answer either. Promising something you can't deliver on is by far worse. So how do we say, I don't know? Some quick little phrases I've liked to use through the years is, let me look into it. I'll discuss it with my colleague, supervisor, whatever, and get back to you. Let me do a little research and see what we can do. That story I told, or just about the client walking out, I later did find a way to accomplish something similar. It was not what they asked for, but it was similar to what they wanted. But it was too late. The company had already gone a separate way, gone a different direction. Had I worked with them in that moment and then had time to do that research and presented an alternative solution, we would have at least still been talking. They might still would have said no, but far more often I find that clients, especially when following these principles, are willing to dance with me. They want to collaborate. They want to come up with a solution together. It also allows the client to take pride in the software that I'm building, feeling like they had a say in it, their voices were heard. And when clients feel like that, incorporating new software into a company is easier. It's just a lot easier. Even if the product is the same as it would have been if you had not consulted the client, the smoothness of the software integration into the company and the excitement around it actually reflects back on you. So this is the open-ended questions are really helpful. They are painting a picture for you about their company, their field, what problem their field is solving, why it's needed. But at the end of the day, companies make decisions based on one thing, and it's growing the bottom line. Currency, everybody speaks currency. So there are a few different ways growing the bottom line can be accomplished. The first one is streamlining processes. This reduces wasted time, reduces the margin of error. And anytime there is like duplicate data entry, the margin of error is really high and it can cost the money company. If it takes someone 7 minutes to enter data into 2 different platforms, and this person makes $20 an hour, that's $2.30 for this employee to do the double data entry for that 7 minutes. You're paying them $2.30 to make a mistake. That's $606 annually for one employee. So if this company has 50 employees doing double data entry, the company is spending over $30,000 annually. And you don't need to know anything about the data that they're entering to break this down. If your project costs less than $30,000, your client will break even the first year and will be making gains after that. Employee satisfaction, there have been many studies that show that it costs the company more to onboard somebody new than to keep somebody that's familiar with the company. So the longer someone stays on at the company, the more efficient they become, which translates to doing the job better. They are able to grow the company's bottom line that way. If your software will limit the annoying aspects of a person's day-to-day job, their work experience, the person will have less of that underlying job dissatisfaction. The employee will stay on with the company longer, become more efficient, and the company will grow their bottom line. You don't have to know anything about electrical engineering to paint a picture like this for your client. Selling more product is a very obvious way the company grows their bottom line. So the more you sell, the more you make. If your company will aid in, or software will aid the company being able to sell more, for instance, create an online store, the company will grow their bottom line. Often projects incorporate more than one of these goals. So accentuate these goals, point them out, how your project will meet these goals, how your project will grow the bottom line, and drop it throughout your conversations. Use it with some of the recommendations from earlier, like with compliments. Oh, good idea. This will reduce the margin of error, save the company time and money. Remind the people with ink in the pen how you will be growing their bottom line each time you talk to them. So you will want to affirm your client right away if there's any kind of negative feedback about something. Thanks for letting me know. Ask open-ended questions. What isn't working for you? How would you like this to look? How would you like this to work? Get feedback. When a meeting takes this turn, feedback becomes the entire point of the meeting. Key questions in meetings like this are what's going well, what isn't going well, and what would you change? Then you pivot. You aren't building this for you. You're building this for them. I once had a manager tell me that the hardest part about being a consultant is having to let your client make bad decisions because at the end of the day, it's up to them. It's my responsibility to guide them, point out what the effects will be of a given choice, and then let it go. If the client says, I want X and X will take you 3 extra weeks to accomplish, tell them and remember the communication tools. That's a really great, creative, exciting, fill in the blank solution. And I think it would work, but it would delay the project by 3 weeks and cost $100 million more plus your left knee, whatever. Or that's a really great creative, etc. solution, but I don't think it will work because I'm a developer, not a wizard. Although some have argued those are the same thing. You'll actually want to give them concrete reasons for why you can't do something, why something won't work, because remember, we're guiding them, we're showing them. When you're the one talking to the client, it's your responsibility to show them why it won't work. And then you can brainstorm together. And that always comes up with a much more effective, workable solution than either one of us being the only one to drive. And you can always say, let me look into it. The absolute fact is that I don't know what I don't know. There is so much out there. It is far more likely that I just haven't seen how to do something yet. Not that it can't be done.
Sorry.
So this can be complicated because by the time the end users are seeing the product, it's finished. Making changes is a lot harder. The company is out of money for the project, and now the company has to hear employees complain about all the money they just spent on them. So depending on what you're building, I find it very helpful to bring in the end users in the discovery phase of the project. I want to hear from them. I want to hear from the people that are going to be doing this day in and day out. That way I have the highest chances possible for smooth integration for what I'm building. This isn't always possible. Some companies aren't interested in paying a warehouse floor worker to talk to me on the phone. Almost never has a company suggested this on their own. I learned a phrase that has been incredibly helpful in getting the right kind of people to give me the feedback at critical stages of development, which is the planning and early minimum viable product phase. So the phrase is forward-thinking employees. Change is hard. It's hard for everyone. And with every good thing, there is a hard thing that comes with it. So even if this software is going to be amazing. So instead of trying to pretend that that isn't true, I like to use it to my advantage. Ask to bring in the people who will be using this day in and day out and ask for their honest, don't protect my feelings, I'm building this for you, first impressions. I don't want someone who's been with a company for 30 years and is going to retire next summer. I want this to be the one, I want somebody on the call that is willing to learn a new system. So asking for key forward-thinking employees to have a look over the product, letting the end users have a voice heard in the product, to see it a few times before actually using it. This all allows for the end users an ease of that transition and have ownership over the product they'll be using. So this has happened to me in situations where I'm talking with like the CTO of a company, getting a bird's eye view, but I'm also talking to engineers for outlines on the ins and outs of the product, functionality, and at times I get conflicting information. I'm left in the position of playing he said, she said, and it can have an unfortunate result of sowing dissension in their staff and creating distrust of me and my company. If the CTO is the one who decided to bring me on and then the staff isn't excited about what's happening, they're losing that trust, then that lack of trust in the CTO transfers to me. And I do not want to do or say anything that breeds discontent or mistrust because of that. So one tool that I've been taught that I really like, is super helpful, is just determine, well, first of all, determine whose direction I'm taking. Who am I am I reporting to the CTO or am I reporting to these engineers that are helping me? And that helps direct conversations, generally speaking, but also it can be very helpful if when I'm emailing people, I'll include everybody. Do not do blind copies because inevitably somebody will reply all, and then it'll look like I'm trying to like keep it a secret that I brought them in. And I always start it with for transparency. Transparency is key to these projects, and starting the conversation for transparency, I'm including all these people. So clients are people. We're used to dealing with computers, software. We can't predict variables with human interaction like we can with computers. People don't have IntelliSense, much to my dismay. So having this formula, though, helps me with these conversations. I have something to fall back onto, like a script to follow. If I don't know what to say in a meeting, I can refer back to my formula. And this is giving me a greater success rate at getting what I need from clients and facilitating this long-term relationship that we're wanting. You don't have to be good at this. You don't have to like talking to people. Every time I've had a meeting with a client, leading up to that meeting, my chest gets really tight. I get a low-grade headache. I'm essentially experiencing anxiety. My very first solo meeting with a client, after I hung up, I like stood up and shook out my hands and tried to get all this nervous energy out. And my coworker stared at me like I was crazy. but I have learned that I'm effective at communicating with clients. I don't like it. It just became a part of my job because I was effective at it. So it doesn't have to be a natural skill set of yours for you to still be able to grow your company's bottom line by the way you're communicating with clients and getting repeat clients. Also, you're human. There will be clients that aren't as easy for you to connect with as others. So bring in somebody else on your team. It's just like when you meet new people, you meet a friend, you jive with people right away and some you don't with, and that's fine. So somebody else might really, truly might be better at communicating than you, and be a team player. It will work better for everybody to allow other people. So I spoke a lot about this topic. We're actually at time. So I know that a lot of you probably work with completely different tools. And I would love to stay on a little bit if anybody does have any questions about something that's been said or wants to hear something, but more in the context of your work environment. But first of all, just thank you for being here. And then also I wanted to model for you the way that I would wrap up a conversation with my clients. So using some of those tools we talked about. So thank you so much for your time today. I know you have other things to do, other sessions you could be at, but I really appreciate that you've given your time to me. And it's just an honor to be working with people like you who are so passionate about their jobs. You guys are willing to spend your energy at a conference to grow your skills and to spend an hour with me talking about ways to connect with your clients. It's really been a pleasure. So if anybody does have any questions, I will stay on for a little bit. I did just see this, a couple of questions. I love that Alex said that, let me look into it. It says go to, I saw a question here.
Can you hear me now, Melissa? At all?
Yes, overseeing strategy for marketing and sales. So communicating with the tech community in general is sort of like a dialect, I would say. So I don't hear Brandon. So Brandon, if you're talking, I'm not hearing you. Sorry, Zara, that we missed your question earlier. So as far as talking to IT type people, oh, I hear somebody coming on now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, sorry. I tried to jump in with Zara's question a couple of times, and now that you're reading it, you can just read it. But okay. I figured out that my mic died.
Okay, sorry about that, Zara. So just to make sure, I'm only seeing the one question from Zara about communicating with technical people, the tech community. So if there's another one, please point it out to me. But one thing that I find helpful there, and I would really encourage anybody else to drop their tools that they've used in the comments as well, because we can all grow and learn from each other, is coming at it from the perspective of everybody in this room, everybody in this session knows more about something than me. So how can I be learning from them? And coming at it with that attitude, even though it feels like it has nothing to do with your question, somehow creates an environment in that conversation for it to become like this give and take. And they're able to respond to me much less threatening than like often how it can start, like, man, you are an idiot, or how do you not know that? And admitting when I don't know something with highly technical people, or say, can you break that down for me? I actually had somebody that I used to work with that always say, can you talk to me at like a third grade level to a senior developer, as a way to help facilitate easier to understand type conversations. So is that what I'm wondering, am I missing an aspect of that question, Zara, where you wanted to, is there another side of that, another side of talking to the tech community that you were referencing? Please feel free to unmute or type it out if there's any other questions or comments. I would love to answer.
Better for me to just explain verbally quickly. So I'm very humble and very aware that a lot of the tech community knows a lot more about tech than I do, because I think I'm just, very intelligent. I'm working with very intelligent, exceptional engineers, and I know there's a lot at this conference, and I admire it greatly. I do have research skills, but the tech world is just new to me in general. So I guess what I'm asking is, how does that communication occur when it's never really occurred before? Not to the extent that it is now. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think it, I encourage you to read Alex's question because I completely agree, or Alex's comment. But I think it's very similar to what the example I used about my dad being an electrical engineer. I cannot tell you what electrical engineers do, but I'm able to have that conversation with him about his job by asking open-ended questions and then letting him fill in some of those gaps. And there will be things that I'll need to understand, but then there are things that I don't need to understand because it's not applying to what the information I'm needing to get. So I'm not sure the work you do, but I functioned as a PM for a little bit. And when I would be talking to my team of developers, I would need to essentially function as a translator between people who speak no technology and people who only speak technology and don't speak human sometimes, depending on the developer you're talking to. So it became this like translation is what I felt like. I was like the Google translator, and sometimes Google translator, like what it translates to English, that's a weird sentence, doesn't make sense. There's not a word for that here, and that's just going to happen. I think most people actually have that expectation, and that's why conversations are so beneficial because it gives room for further clarity. So find out what information you actually need to know, and then what information they might be really excited about, but isn't relevant to what you need to be giving back to the client or whatever you're needing to gather there. It can be really daunting to feel like everybody around you is smarter than you and everybody knows you're faking it. But I'm sure that there's been sessions that have been talking about imposter syndrome and the fact that you're here, the fact that you're learning, the fact that you're interested in this stuff. I would definitely say you're not an imposter. And you might be feeling like, oh, everybody in here is bigger than me, knows more than me, whatever. But it's generally a very collaborative and welcoming community in technical circles.
Sure. Thank you. And thankfully, I've never felt like an imposter, thankfully. I just know that my role just is a little different, and it's new to the company that I'm working with and everything. So I just want to be as thoughtful as I can be with communication, and kind of have an understanding with one another. So thank you for answering. Makes a lot of sense.
Roles are really tricky because there's no expectation there. So I would super recommend use that to your advantage. So you're creating the standard here. So that's kind of awesome. You get to say, well, in this role, I'm functioning as, and then you're laying out a precedent there. You're not having to fill somebody else's shoes or meet somebody else's expectations. You're able to set that tone, which I would just say, try and like twist it to your advantage as much as you can. And you're going to get pushback from somewhere, no matter what. We all do. And everything we try, somebody's going to give pushback. And so again, use that to your advantage. Did I miss seeing something? Would that be beneficial? No, I think that it's still better to do it this way. Or a phrase I really like to use that I often forget, but every time I do, it's been very helpful is you may be right. You may be right about that. But for this time, we're going to do this, or whatever it needs to be for that interconnected talking. I would say that being in a new position, you're actually sitting in a much better place.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and drop out. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Zara.
So, Melissa, since you looked at the chat, you probably saw Calvin's question about, do you worry about clients frequently changing requirements? I'm going to go ahead and tag a question of my own to the end of it. And do you have a silver bullet to stop that?
Yeah. So the changing requirements always happens. That's what I was referring to actually with scope creep, or even if it's not changing requirements, it's just like slightly broadening them. It's very common that, like I said, once something's taking shape, they're going to see, oh crap, that's not what I wanted, but this was the agreement. So this is where clear communication is vital. And the more documentation I have on my end, I can refer back to. I try and refer back to all the email interchanges I have, and I can say, well, this was what we agreed to at this date. If you're wanting to change, I'll need to check with my supervisor. I'll need to refer with my team, whatever. Or if you already know, I know that's going to cost this much more dollars. If you're interested in doing that, I would love to. But any kind of collaboration way that you can, when you can have it be like a team, like we're coming up with this together, is far more successful in the long run. Even with bringing them back. And I ran into a big problem where I would really want to provide excellence for my clients. And what I ended up doing was giving them stuff for free without realizing it. So once my managers pointed that out to me, I actually had to go and ask for this kind of feedback, because I wanted to know where I could grow in this. And they said, yeah, you're too nice. You're giving away too much stuff. And so it really honestly came back to me. I wasn't paying close enough attention to that here's this very beginning requirements document. Here's what's been agreed upon for the larger scope. And you get like this many points of automations, or however your company divvies that up. And so really trying to be honest myself and be in integrity with my company and with the other company. And I had a manager once tell me that when you're working with especially a new client, the first couple of times, everybody will try and get spread stuff out. Somebody said, as they learn more about the technology and what you're capable of, their expectations are going to expand. And I mean, that's honestly like a compliment. So take it for what it is, but then find a way to keep being in integrity to your company, to yourself, and to your client as a priority, because it will just keep it really clean, like have clean boundaries moving forward. And they will actually have a greater trust of you at the end of the day. But it feels counterintuitive to me, at least. So yeah, if that's helpful, or if you wanted to nuance the question a little bit, bring some clarity to where I might have misunderstood, I'd love to hear it, Calvin, but thanks for asking. Was there anything else from anybody?
Well, I know that we're getting close to the start of the next session, but I don't think anybody's going to kick us out of the room. I have two that I've been thinking of, if nobody else has any. First one is, have you ever encountered clients or even coworkers who are difficult in that they seem incapable of learning? For example, I have a friend, spoiler alert, this friend is me, who dealt with some people who literally every day had to do a certain task, and every other day at a minimum had to ask how to do the thing. And this friend, who was me, saved an email where they had explained, here's what you do, and just forwarded it to that person every single time they came and asked. And this friend of mine was informed that that was not the most politically correct and polite way to handle that. So, you know, do you have a go-to that doesn't involve screaming into your pillow when you run into those situations?
Yeah. I actually have done something similar, because I feel like I would be the friend in this scenario that is needing to ask the question over and over. So that's part of where my really detailed note taking has come from. I will, and I've actually gotten in the habit of creating documentation when I'm learning a new process that just immediately used for new onboarded people, because there's so much that after I've worked at a company for a year, I don't remember what was foreign to me and what was hard for me. And especially if it's like the first 6 months at a company, there's so much new knowledge that even if I'm doing it all the time, I'm doing all of that stuff all the time, and it's all new, and it just takes a little bit longer to sink in. So I've used those opportunities when helping with other people, is to do almost exactly what you did, create documentation, but then make that available, and you can refer back to it, or ask them if they need help finding it or something like that. So it's, I don't know if the person who told you that was not the kindest way, I'm not sure how they phrased it, the PC way, if pointing somebody back to documentation would be on that same level. But either way, it's a huge service to your company, your coworkers, the community around you, to help people. And I will try and I try and overdo it. I'll include screenshots. I'll include, you can ignore this like warning sign. It has nothing to do with what you're doing here. You can ignore it, or whatever it is. Same principles here. What objections might come up? What will it look like to this person for the first time? And how can I answer as many of those questions here, and have it very like step by step by step by step, so that they don't have to ask somebody. They can just be like, okay, here's what that's saying, so I'm going to click that button, and get really minuscule. Has been super helpful to me before in looking back for myself, but then also with passing that on to other people. Like somebody said, you can pretend it's for use by others. I do. I come back to mine all the time.
Cool. And I guess my last question, if you still have the time, is have you ever run into clients who want the giraffe, elephant, pangolin also crossed with a Pegasus, and they don't have a point of reference for any of those animals? In this analogy, they went to a conference and picked up some buzzwords, and that's literally their only experience because they cannot tell you what an elephant looks like, and they insist that the Pegasus exists. So clearly you can kludge all these things together. And again, my go-to is usually screaming into a pillow, because I don't have anything in my toolbox that always shuts that down the way it needs to be shut down.
Yeah. And, unfortunately, I don't know if there is any silver bullet for that kind of thing. I'm sure everybody on here that's dealt with clients, I was checking to see if anybody said, me too, like this happens. You're so right. And I don't know that anything will completely shut down clients that are really committed to being right about things that, it would be like us going to them and saying, no, electrical engineer, you can't create a refrigerator or something. They're like, you don't know what you're talking about. This is my field. Very clearly, I don't know what electrical engineers do. So, but what I try and do is if I hear a buzzword being used, I'll actually use it back to them. And then I'll say, I'm not sure the level of understanding of everybody on this call. So just to quickly summarize, and I'll give like 3 to 5 word definition of what that is. And I do try and talk to, like I'm talking to my elementary school kids, like, oh, an API, that's essentially like a set of rules and regulations for how one set of software, one website can communicate with another website. It tells you what you can and can't do. So they have an API, that's great. I'll look into the documentation and see if some kind of connectivity like this is possible. So trying to immediately use it back to them. And then that's a way that I used to try and invite them in on that conversation again, have them be included on it so that it feels like we're talking and I'm not saying, you're an idiot, basically. It's also possible that they do know, and I am being unnecessarily simplistic. And if that's the case, I always try and say, if you are aware of this, let me know, and we can talk a little bit more detailed about it. Often when this situation comes up for me, it's when there's multiple people on the line. Like I'm talking to the engineer, I'm talking to the CTO, and I'm talking to the president of the company. And one of those three throws out something. And so I do try and be a little bit more diplomatic with the way I say it and apologize if I'm sounding too condescending, whatever that is.
Awesome. That's useful and probably nicer than my typical approach.
Thanks. Awesome. Alex has just dropped a comment too, make you aware of it. Yeah, using something practical. Yeah, it's very true. I feel like that's a very common experience I hear from people that are dealing with clients is what they're asking for would be really helpful if they worked for NASA, but they actually work for NASCAR, and like what astronauts and race car drivers need are very different things. But it's still engines. It's still something that makes you move. Like there's enough similarities that people feel like this is the same thing. So really pushing things to the wall, like being really literal with people, I have found to be helpful because there's so much assumed knowledge on both sides that it just pushes things a little bit forward to eliminate some of those things, if that makes sense. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, Alex. Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate the interaction here at the end. If anybody has anything else, that's fine. If not, we got another couple more hours of great information. Like I said at the beginning, this is my first e-conference. I feel like it's been going pretty well. I do miss the random interactions that I can get with people, but that's even being answered with some of those open rooms that they have, and then the networking spaces. So yeah, kudos to everybody who's putting this on. I hope everybody else is having a good experience too. Great.
Awesome. Thanks for sticking around, Melissa.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Talk to you later. Oh, I need to drop in my, let me see. I don't know if she's still on, who asked for that link to the YouTube video. Is she still on?
If she's not, I've ended up in the same session as her 9 times out of 10. So
Okay.
if I see her, if you drop it, I'll save it.
Okay,
And throw it.
I'll save it. Let me grab it real quick then. I think I saved it on that slide, so it's just a matter of finding that slide now. Okay. I'm not seeing it there. And then I'll also drop in my LinkedIn. If anybody else wants to drop in your LinkedIn, that would be great. We can connect there with everybody that's on this call. It's a great way to it's not in here. I thought it would be where I put the video in.
There might be a way to track it down.
Well, I'm sure I could. Actually, let me just try Googling it real quick and see what happens. That might be the simplest way. Yeah, found it much faster that way. Oh, that's a daily motion link. Here we go. All right, that's it. All right, so I'll drop that in the chat here. Thank you for dropping in your LinkedIn, Brandon. Those are just 4 of us left, but if anybody else would like to drop theirs, then that would be great. And I'll do mine real quick as well.
Awesome. Thanks again, Melissa.
Yeah, thank everybody. I appreciate it. All right, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.